Welcome to our session. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Steve Gutman. This is Eric Saltwell. We're from the Expression Web product team. Our session is called No Platform Left Behind, kind of one of those titles you come up with when you're not quite sure exactly what content you're going to present. But we've got actually a bunch of things to talk about today. First, have you ever been amazed at what can be accomplished with just web standards technology? Applications in the web page, spreadsheets in the web page. We're going to talk about what has been accomplished and why web standards technology is going to lead to even more amazing stuff in the future. Do you use images in your web pages? Have a Flickr account? I'm going to show you some web standards-based imaging technology that is quite remarkable, might blow you away. Ever have problems debugging your pages cross-browser? We're going to talk about Super Preview, and Eric is going to extend the demo that he gave at the keynote, the short demo that he gave. And we'll get into Super Preview in more detail. Finally, have you ever opened up a web page and tried to figure it out and been absolutely flabbergasted at how many CSS rules and selectors there are and not being able to make hide nor hair of what's going on in that page? I'm going to show you some existing tools in Expression Web that actually make diagnosing and understanding the CSS in your web pages much, much easier. So first, let's talk a little bit about web standards technology. And I wanted to start this out by noting that Dave Siegel is the Alan Greenspan of the web. Does anyone know who Dave Siegel is? Okay, so Alan Greenspan, right back in early 2000s, we thought he was a financial genius because he kept interest rates low, which led to all this home buying, et cetera, et cetera. And now financial genius is not the term that is usually applied to him. So Dave Siegel is this guy I met earlier in my career when I was working at Adobe. Dave created this font called Tecton, which was the first architectural rendering typeface, which was marketed as an Adobe original and turned out to be quite popular. And Dave went on to have basically a series of fairly unsuccessful font and rendering businesses. And then back in 94, 95, Dave started getting interested in the web, started building web pages. And being a rather finicky designer, Dave was frustrated by the inability of the current Generation 1 web technology. Remember, this is HTML, the font tag, the blank tag, and so on. The inability of that technology to allow him to precisely lay out a page. So Dave came up with this trick for precision layout called the single pixel transparent GIF trick. Probably you may be familiar with it. So Dave is essentially the father of table-based design. And using this single pixel transparent GIF and tables, you're able to put elements inside of table cells, stick these GIFs next to those elements, and then stretch them side by side or up and down or both in order to nudge the elements inside those table cells into the right location. And using this technique and many, many nested tables, you're essentially able to achieve any kind of layout that you'd like. However, now that we have CSS, HTML4, we try and divorce structure from style, and this is not the way we like to lay out pages anymore, right? We like to use divs, positioning, floats. But my reason in bringing this up is not to cast aspersions on Dave Siegel who went on to write this very popular book, Creating Killer Websites. But to note something that I've noticed in my career, which is when you put constraints on people, it actually sort of increases their creativity, helps them figure out ways to kind of go beyond what the technology was originally envisioned to be able to do. And we've seen this with Web 1.0 technology. We've seen it with Web 2 technology. So in 1999, a company introduced the first browser-based spreadsheet. So this was before Ajax, and the company used hidden off-screen iframes to create the multi-threading that Ajax allows you to do today. We saw in 2002 DHTML mail programs, Oddpost, which was later bought by Yahoo and turned into Yahoo Mail. We saw a few years ago, and this still kind of blows me away, the ability to type into a search box, have those keystrokes sent to the cloud, a query done and returned as you're typing in order to get search suggestions. And Google Maps, so many people probably had the same reaction that I had when Google first introduced Google Maps, which was, gee, I should have thought of that. That seems really obvious. Well, Google has gone on to enhance these in some, I think, incredible ways. I noticed about a year and a half ago, when you create a route, you can actually mouse over the route and get a little dragger, and you can drag that route and in real time be rerouted dynamically as you're dragging, maintaining the constraints of the street system and of the route. So my point in bringing this up is we've seen Web 1.0 technology, we've seen Web 2.0 technology, and we're sort of on the cusp of Web 3.0. CSS3 and HTML5 are going to give us capabilities that really we haven't seen before. CSS3 is going to provide things like multi-column, you'll have drop shadows, you'll be able to do real typography, you'll be able to basically include any font that you want in a web page and have that downloaded dynamically when it needs to be used. HTML5 provides offline storage and a real graphics, well, multiple real graphics APIs via SVG and the canvas tag. So things are interesting now. They're going to get even more exciting. And I'm here to say that when we talk about RIAs, we typically talk about Flash, Silverlight, but we have to note that the most popular RIA platform today is the Web Standards Platform, and what we're going to be able to do in the future is actually even more amazing than what we can do today. So I thought I would show you this Web 2.0 based imaging technology that I think is as remarkable as some of the other examples that I brought up. But before I do that, I have to mention that I'm not just the product unit manager for Expression Web, but I'm also a lazy scripter. What's a lazy scripter? I don't like reading a 300-page manual before I dive in and start doing some coding, figuring things out. And this is actually what I really like about HTML, JavaScript, CSS, is you can kind of figure out 80% of what you're trying to do, and then you pull up a web page or look in a reference book to get that remaining 10 to 20%. And so let me segue here into a demo of some technology. Now, last year at this conference, the Silverlight team introduced Deep Zoom. And so Deep Zoom, as you've probably seen, is technology that allows you to accomplish the classic powers of 10 type demo. You can have an infinitely wide, infinitely deep composition, and you can very easily navigate to different elements within that image using the scroll wheel and basic gestures. One of my favorite examples of this technology, I'm a California boy, is this Yosemite Extreme Panoramic Imaging Project. And you can see, as we zoom in here, we see small pictures begin to appear. And as you zoom in, the resolution and detail in this imagery is simply astounding. And the ability to navigate and get into it really quickly is, I think, just remarkable. And I happen to like this image because it's of Half Dome, and I've hiked to the top of Half Dome. And the last quarter mile or so, you actually have to pull yourself up on steel cables, and you can see people doing that in this image here. So you guys have seen Deep Zoom, and a couple of months ago I got a call from Karupa, who does the Deep Zoom Composer product, and he said, hey, the Sea Dragon team has developed a version of Deep Zoom using Ajax. So if you haven't seen it before, here's an example of Deep Zoom done in JavaScript and HTML. This is a map of Yellowstone, where I took my family on vacation last year. And you can see, again, in Ajax, this same responsiveness, ability to zoom and get incredible detail, no plug-in needed, using web standards technology. Pretty cool, huh? So if we could only do what we could do in Silverlight, this would be interesting, but maybe not remarkable. But Sea Dragon Ajax actually has a robust API, a bunch of JavaScript functions that you can call to navigate within the image, to do overlays, to do a whole bunch of interesting stuff. And because this is all done on a web page in HTML and JavaScript, I can actually access those functions and use them in things like anchor tags. So, for example, the first thing I thought I wanted to do here was to find a way to easily navigate to the embedded images within this composition. So let's take a quick look at how Sea Dragon Ajax is initialized. It's quite simple. There's a JavaScript function, or a JavaScript include file. There's a variable viewer that's initialized, and a function that's called seadragon.viewer, and it's pointed at a div on your page where you want that deep zoom image to appear. And then we also pointed at an XML file which gives all the details of that pyramid of images. There's an onload handler initialized here. And essentially, using the API, we can navigate from within that image. So I created a set of thumbnails, which I neglected to put in a snippet. I created a set of thumbnails of each of those images. And if we look at those thumbnails, what I've done to navigate this image is to simply zoom into each of the photos, like so, call a Sea Dragon Ajax function called getBounds, which I've wired into this link, which simply returns the upper left corner width and height of at that particular zoom level, and then used a standard anchor tag to allow me to navigate easily to different parts of that image. So this was literally done within minutes. It took much longer to actually create the thumbnails than it did to wire this in. So using web standards technology and the Seadragon Ajax JavaScript libraries, we've been able to do something with imagery that I would have thought would have been impossible a little while ago. And we can even do more. I have an example here where I've combined jQuery with this same set of imagery. And if you're not aware, jQuery is a JavaScript framework that allows you to do animations, to navigate and find elements within the DOM, to create widgets. And in this case, I've simply used a set of timers to allow me to navigate from one image, one location within that composition to another, and also to put on this kind of semi-animated caption. So, pretty cool stuff. Little? Right. Great. So, Deep Zoom and Seadragon Ajax compositions are created with this program called the Deep Zoom Composer. It's a free download from expression.microsoft.com, and it allows you to simply import photos and place them at different zoom levels within a composition. It will automatically generate a sample web page in either Silverlight or Seadragon Ajax that you can use as a stub or a base for extending your web page. And you can find out about the Seadragon Ajax API from livelabs.com/Seadragon-Ajax. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Eric Saltwell, who's going to talk to us about Super Preview.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Alan, is my mic on? I've been here at MIX 2 other times, and each of the years that I presented, I forgot to turn my mic on, so Steve and I had a bet whether or not I'd remember. I'm on the feature design team of Expression Web, and we have this passion around watching users work. We like to go find people who build websites. We like to sit there behind them and watch them. It's a little creepy, actually. And we like to see what they do. Sometimes we ask them to do authoring or bug fixing. And sometimes we just like to go and we just like to watch. And when we started to do this, it was kind of interesting because what we found was a little surprising to us, probably shouldn't have been. And that was when people build web pages, yeah, they spend a lot of time writing markup, but they actually spend much more time debugging markup. And I actually think for a whole number of reasons debugging markup is extremely hard, is harder even than debugging traditional C, C++ code. One of the things that really makes it a pain, and that we saw very clearly, was working with different browsers. And we saw people do this a lot, and we found that the people who did this fell into one of two camps, what I'd call the virtual tester and the physical tester. And the physical tester is a person who has a desk with a computer on it, and then next to that, they've got another computer. And then next to that, they've got another computer. And when it gets time to do testing, they'll typically go from their main machine, and they'll walk over to the other physical machine, and they'll go and they'll kind of test it on say, Safari on the Mac, or maybe Firefox on the PC if they're working on the Mac. And then when they're done with that, they get up and they go to another machine where now they've got IE6 installed. And every time they kind of do this little walk over to the other machine, they kind of swear at all the guys who make the different browsers a little bit. And every time they go and they test IE6, they especially swear at my company a little bit. And that never made me feel very good.
Just a little bit.
Yeah. So then there's the other guy. The other guy's the virtual tester. And the virtual tester, he he's a little bit more, say, technological, or he's put some more thought into it, and he doesn't have different machines, no walking for him. Instead, he's got virtual machines, right? And so he's got his real machine, and then sitting on that is a virtual machine, and so he builds his page, and then he needs to go test, and he starts up a virtual PC image, and you hear a sucking sound as all the RAM on his machine gets eaten by that virtual PC, and every time he does that, he hates my company a little bit more. So we thought about what could we do to fix this. We said, all right, we would really love to make this problem of debugging cross-browser pages much easier. So what could we do? Well, so what would we do? We went around to a lot more people, and we said, we'd like to watch you do this. And we also took a look at what else is out there. And we found some technologies out there like browser cam, right, that will let you see what your page looks on multiple pages. And when we tried these solutions, we found a number of issues, right? First of all, having to always go out to the web sometimes took as long as actually starting up that virtual PC, so that wasn't a good solution. In addition, what we found was that this problem typically was in 3 phases. The first phase is figure out whether or not it's busted, right? And so you have to go check. And the problem is, even if you don't have a problem, you change a page, you have to go check anyway. And that sucks, right? So that's phase 1. Go figure out if it's broken. Then phase 2. Phase 2 is if it is broken, find what's broken, which is not as easy often as it sounds, because one problem over here means that you have actually a lot of problems over here, and sometimes the pages get so messy you can't tell what's different. So 1, figure out if it's different. 2, if it's different, isolate the element that's different. And then 3, go find it. Now, we thought about solving each of these 3 steps, and we said, which could we take care of? We said, okay, we think we actually can make a good solution around problem 1, around figuring out if it's the same. What about 2? Yeah, we think we can isolate the element. What about 3? Well, when we looked at 3, we said 2 things. One, typically people who are professionally building web pages get to the point where they see the element, very often know what's wrong when they look at what's going on. But even if not, this is the type of problem where figuring out what's wrong would require me doing black magic on my part in my application, and I'm not a big fan of actually black magic in applications. So we said, all right, let's tackle the first 2. And we sat down and we looked at how people built, and they said a few things. One, okay, here's how you build, here's how they do it. They sit down and they have a browser that they love, right, which is the browser that they will typically build against. We call that their baseline browser. So they'll have that up somewhere, and then they'll have their code editor, and they'll type, go check, type, go check. Working against their baseline browser. Once they get it done, they say, okay, this is my known good. This is the page I know works, so I want to go look at something else. So let me go test my other browsers now. So this is kind of, we wanted our application to mimic the same thing. And I'll show you the app in a second. I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of blathering on here, but we'll get to that in a second. But we built that concept of the baseline browser into this feature. And I totally lost where I was. Okay, so we saw, hey, okay, everybody has a baseline browser. They work with it. Then they test, right? Then they try to go fix it afterwards. I'm going to start to dig in now. I'm going to switch machines. But while I'll do, I'll say, you know, when we thought about this problem, we thought about we thought, well, what can we do to help people? And what can we do that's better than what's out there? And we said, first of all, we want the testing to be fast as we can possibly get it, which means, you know, try not to go out to the web just to check every browser, right? That's not a good solution. Second of all, we said be accurate. If your solution does not look like the actual browser, nobody will use this feature. It's useless, and we're wasting people's time. So be fast. Be accurate. If there's a question I get all the time, it's about how accurate are you, and I'll talk a little bit about what we do to make sure that we're accurate. So what did we do? We said, okay, what we're actually going to do is we're going to make sure we're accurate by talking to the browsers themselves, and we're going to get the renderings itself from the browser. And that's good. And then we said, and to make it fast, we'll talk to the local browsers when you have that browser installed on your machine. So that's fast and accurate. So what you see here up on the screen is, sorry, this is the same page I used in the keynote. I apologize to everybody for not making a new page. And what you see on the bottom is Super Preview. I'm actually going to pull it into full screen mode. And this is a collection of browsers that I have up. This is not necessarily the RTM version. We're still talking about it. But you can see here a collection of browsers, and we specify which ones are local. And here you see Firefox 3, IE6. You see IE8 in compatibility mode, which is a way of getting a quick local check of IE7. And then here's IE8. Do you have a question, sir? Wow, that's an excellent question. He asked, how do you have IE6 and IE8 on the same box at the same time? You know, we were super passionate to help make IE6 easy, right? Because that's the one that everybody grumbles about, and rightly so. I mean, this browser's been around for a long time, and I totally wish it wasn't popular, but it is. And until it isn't, we got to work with it. So here's what we did. We said, got to be accurate, want it local. We took IE6, and we changed it to make it side-by-side deployable with other versions of IE. We made it work on Vista, and we bundle it inside of Super Preview. So there is no thank you. Thank you. And let me just tell you,
that was a lot of work.
Let me just tell you, my engineers hated me when I said that was what we were going to do. Absolutely. There's a lot of code in IE6. There is no, so when you say go get my rendering from IE6, we talk to IE6. So it is accurate, and it is side-by-side deployable. That's exactly what we do. All right. So we went out and we talked to users about this feature, and we said, hey, that's great if you want to pull up Firefox. And by the way, these are beta bits. These are early, especially for Firefox. We know we have performance work to do here. That was not quick enough, but we're working on it. So that's great that up can come Firefox. You can talk to Firefox. If you wanted to kill that and say, I want to go talk to Safari and hit refresh, you could go talk to Safari. And again, now this case, we don't have any magic to run Macs on the PC. This is going over the network, and hopefully my Mac isn't sleeping right now. It's actually talking to
there you go.
My Mac Mini you can see down there. And there's the rendering from that. Now, we said, OK, that's great. Actually, that's really nice, even separate from cross-browser, that when people are using their baseline browser to build their page, they can actually just use Super Preview. Just get this single page rendering in here, and you can use it to verify, right? Just kind of, I'm building my page, blah, blah, blah. I do some kind of styling, and when I hit the Save button, of course, if I make a change, it will re-render. So, and again here, like I said, so this is a remote browser. We're working on the perf. Let me talk a little bit now about what else we did. We said, actually, you know what? OK. We took this out to users, and we said, hey, that's nice. What do you think of it? Do you like it? We actually did kind of the Bill Buxton thing. We built paper prototypes. We sketched them on sticky notes, and we put them in front of users. And they said, hey, that's great. You know, actually, we actually found people who did this in Photoshop. They would take screenshots of their browsers, and then they would put them into Photoshop as layers and make them semi-transparent. And they said, actually, sometimes when we do it against the original image that was the design of the page, the comp. And that would be great, which is why we actually now give you the ability to also load an image. So you can compare those two, and I'm just going to pull out rulers, and we do kind of all the stuff you would expect. We do synchronized scrolling, and we do synchronized zooming. You can drag out guides that kind of say, oh, are these really at the same location? Or, oh, look, they're a little bit off there. That's great. That kind of helps you as you're building your baseline to say, is my baseline look like my design? Then in addition, we said, OK, once I have my baseline, and for most people right now that's Firefox, let me compare that now to a collection of browsers. So to pull up IE6, and to pull up IE8, and to pull up that, and then to hit refresh, and you should see them kind of come up. And here's the experience. So there's IE6 up already. That's the one we've already done perf tuning on. You see that compared to Firefox. Now, at this point, we said what we want is we want a really quick experience for stage one of fixing this problem, the check, right? See if it's going to work or not. And so what do? We do you can quickly go and you can say check, 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 and notice how you see that really nice flipping of what's different. I really like that a lot.
That was your idea, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. So in addition, you can do that using that same effect I talked in Photoshop, semi-transparent layers, right? People call that onion skinning. We do the same thing where you can onion skin. We put, in this case, this is whichever is, these are all, so this is your baseline browser, and over here's these comparisons that you haven't built your page with. And here you are just onion skinning each of these comparison browsers on top, and you can quickly see which of the IE are more closer to Firefox, right? That's pretty clear. We said, hey, okay, maybe for navigation, we have a little thumbnail, right? So you can drag the thumbnail around. That's super nice. We have this. We wanted this really great experience to say, hey, okay, what we think we have already, even without that, what we have already is this great experience of quickly checking if your page is accurate or not. And in which browsers is it broken? Now you need to say, okay, now that I know that it's broken, isolating the problem. So just as I've already shown in the keynote, you can hover over. Now, I want to talk about this. I'm super proud about this. This makes me really excited. All these solutions like Browser Cam and these guys, what do? They give you images. Okay, that's nice for stage 1 of the problem, right? Check whether or not you have a problem. But for stage 2, it kind of blows. I apologize. It's not wonderful, right? Because you need to isolate the element that's having the problem. And to kind of highlight that, I'm going to go over here to this nav bar, right? And look. Oh, look, that's off, right? That's clearly off. But is that the element that's having the problem? Or is it its parent that's having the problem? And if I kind of look out, oh, look, his parent is off. What about his parent? Oh, his parent is off. What about his parent? What about his parent? Oh, there's the guy that's having the problem. That's the guy that you need to go fix. So we do this because when we communicate to the browsers, we don't just get back images. We also get back data about the DOM element. What are the elements in the tree? What are its location, its position? When I select, and see we have 2 selection modes here. I have simple select, which just outlines in red. And if you want to more emphasize select, we can do this punch-out technique. Notice that in addition, at the bottom, I get this data about what is the element type, what is its size and location, what class does it have. This is isolating. This is quickly finding what is the element that's having a problem so that I can go fix it.
And if it had an ID?
If it had an ID, then you would even get an enhanced experience, which is what you see here, right? And actually, so this is brand new. I had a big fight with my engineering team about should we even show this. Right now, we do this only for things that have IDs because we need to find the same element in 2 DOM trees. And when we render the page, we run the onload JavaScript, so the 2 browsers could actually have drastically different DOMs if they're doing browser sniffing, right? So we have an enhanced, crazy algorithm we're working on that doesn't require IDs. But in the event that we can find the same element in both trees, and we certainly can if they have IDs, we show not just where the element should be. You see that outlined in red, right, in the IE browser. But we also show where the element is. And we're kind of thinking about how do we even show you what is the pixel difference between those 2, right? So I think I've covered just about everything in Super Preview. Of course, you can put it back into the app. And again, this is something that we're working on. We really don't have the usability model of integrating it back into the app done yet. So that's going to change a lot. But we know we want this kind of rich integrated experience. But let me just end by saying this. When we built this feature, we love it. And I think my team is really passionate about it. And when we go see users, we see IE6 be such a pain that my guys came to me and they said, hey, Eric, we'd really like to do something here. IE6 is really painful, and it's no good for Microsoft that everybody has to feel that pain. Couldn't we do something here? So what we did was I'll actually bring it up. So it turned out that already, we love this feature so much that we decided even if you're not using Expression Web, you should have the ability to use, if you buy the app, you should have the ability to use Super Preview, even if you don't want to use Expression Web as your editor. And so that's what we do. We actually have a standalone that we install with the app. And you see that here. And this is just a totally standalone experience. So my guys came to me and they said, hey, listen, we'd really like to help people with IE6. It's just no good that people feel this pain. And we said, okay, we have this standalone experience that if people don't want to use XWeb, they just want Super Preview, come buy the app, you get Super Preview. And so we said, well, let's say for IE6, which is, again, the biggest problem, let's just give it away for free, right? Let's give people, we did all this work to make IE6 side by side. Let's just give it away. And so that's actually what we're doing. And after a lot of argument with my marketing team and my sales team about why does that make sense, that's what we're doing. And of course, on the USB keys that you guys, I think, got at the event. Did anybody get the USB keys? Okay, great. So they're on there. If you go to expression.microsoft.com, you can also download that. So we call it Super Preview for Internet Explorer. And
it's also on the IE DVD that was handed out as well.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Steve. So it only will support Internet Explorer. And again, that's the trade-off with my marketing and sales guys. But this will be full. Right now, we've betaed it. About sometime this year, we'll RTM it, and it will be a continued, maintained, supported product. You can get the real IE6 right on your box, right? So I think that's it for Super Preview. Thanks a lot, Steve.
Okay. Moved on to?
What?
Moved on to?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Hold on.
So
Forgotten feature.
Yeah. So Steve wanted to remind me about one more thing that we should talk about, and that is, you know, I kind of previewed an experience around. Let me go back into Expression Web and click on Super Preview. We talked a little bit about this experience and about the fact that we kind of coordinate elements and the fact that we're working on this, how do you coordinate two elements? Now, the first question I get when anybody sees this UI is they think, wow, this is kind of like you're running some kind of browser diagnostics, the IE Dev Toolbar or Firebug, right? But multi-browser, wouldn't that be great? And so, of course, the next thing they want is they want a DOM tree. And actually, that's exactly what you see here. So what we don't have hooked up yet, but what we're quickly working on, is when you select an element, it selects it in the DOM tree. If you maneuver the DOM tree with your mouse, the same element gets selected in the different browsers. And we're super excited about it, but it's still in cooking. So, thank you.
So this is really going to go. So the DOM tree is really going to help people find that element that's causing a problem within your markup. So let's see where we're at here. Right. Super Preview? Saw that. So before I joined Microsoft about 1.5 years ago, I was working at Autodesk. And at Autodesk, each of the product groups is responsible for maintaining its own portion of the company intranet. And the webmaster for the intranet supplies all the product groups with a set of templates, and theoretically, it should just be a matter of copying content into the content region of those templates, publishing it, and you're up and running. Of course, life is rarely that simple. And I recall just spending hours trying to figure out why this one div was flipping under the other div, and I'm sure many of you have encountered the same problem. And you know what it is. You know someplace, you know, the padding, margin, border is set incorrectly, and you're just exceeding the container, and that's why it's flipping under. But the problem is that if you have a complex set of CSS rules and selectors, it's super hard to find which rule, which selector is governing which property. You know, which border, which padding, which margin is actually winning. And on the basis of this experience, I came to the conclusion that CSS is hard. And this is kind of a paraphrase. I think the actual quote was on his deathbed, George Bernard Shaw said, dying is easy, comedy is hard. But I think this captures the sentiment. And so, just for fun, I typed, why is CSS hard, into live search. And I got some interesting results. See if I can actually read them from here. Here's one. Has anyone ever read an article that explains why the different browser groups seem incapable of interpreting the CSS spec enough to provide reasonably similar implementations? To me, it doesn't seem like rocket science. And the response, of course, was, it possibly is close to rocket science in actual fact. And I think the IE and Firefox teams would probably agree. I'm in the process of converting an old site from tables to CSS. I was struggling with the layout. He found the Iron Myers layouts. If you've ever, that's a great resource for CSS layouts. It uses the YUI, the Yahoo grid system. But the problem is that the rules have multiple selectors associated with them. There's hundreds of rules. And it's almost impossible to tweak them to get a result that's any different from the one that you have originally chosen. So that's a problem. In his book, Cascading Style Sheets, Eric Meyer says that CSS is easy to use. I don't agree. CSS uses a complex cascade to determine which rules apply to an element, something that takes 15 pages in a book to explain. Actually, I think it's probably closer to 50 pages. But this, to me, is a fairly eloquent statement of the problem, which is that we have this really complex cascade, which is determined by inheritance. So HTML elements inheriting from their ancestors. We've got specificity, which is where is the CSS rule defined? Inline, in the page, in a separate CSS file. Order, where does the rule actually, where is that defined within the CSS file? And that may determine which property wins. And importance, of course. And when we designed Expression Web, one of the things that we were really trying to do was to address this particular problem. And so when I was preparing this talk, I said, let me go find a complex CSS page. I pulled down the home page from MSN, said, let me see if I can figure out how to tweak this design. Maybe I want to make it look like a MySpace page. Opened this up, and if we look on the side here, we see a lot of rules. And in fact, I estimate there's about 1,500 different individual rules. And by the way, I pulled down CNN, and it has over 2,000 different rules. So what are you going to do? Spend a month and a half trying to figure out how all these rules are interconnected? I don't think many clients actually stand for that. So what can we do? First thing we could do is we could look in here and see what rules are not associated with this page. So we actually have a nice set of CSS reports that let us look for unused styles, undefined classes, mismatched case. That's a common error. And we can look down here and see, wow, 1,131 errors. There are a number of undefined classes. That can really screw you up. And over 1,000 unused styles. So if I wanted, I could navigate the source and eliminate those unused styles. We actually have a slightly easier way to do it here. I can simply choose Show Styles Used in this current page. I'm going to categorize by type here. And you can see we have kind of a nice color coding scheme. The blue are the element tags, green are classes, and red down here are ID selectors. And if I want to go through and change my background color, for example, or change the background image, that's typically defined in the body. And I can see I've got a bunch of body tags here, so maybe I'll just go through and look for a background color defined. Let's see, not there, not there. So there's background color transparent, but that's not a transparent background color. Here's another one, background color pound EEE, which I know is gray. because it has equal RGBs. Well, maybe that's defined in a different element down from the body. So let's take a look. In this case, I'm going to say, just show me the styles used on my current selection. And I'll click on it here, and if we look down at the selected style preview, we can look for that background color. So I can easily mouse through here. I still don't see it. So this is one of the problems that we wanted to address with Expression Web. And we created a facility for doing this that I think is very, very powerful. So our CSS properties palette allows us to choose an element, and it's split into two sections. So I've selected the body through the breadcrumbs up here, and I can see 7 different rules. And if I click on each rule, I'll be able to see the particular CSS properties that are defined for that rule. And look, if that property is defined in the rule, it's bolded here. And if it's overridden by a different rule, it's crossed out, just like the IE Dev toolbar. Now, if we click the summary button here, I can actually see the winning properties, or the properties that are in effect, that cascade through all those different rules. Very, very powerful. And here's that background. I can see a color. I can see a background image. So let's just go to the code here. And I think I will simply pick a new background image. Maybe get rid of these other elements. Save that, go back here, and give that a little preview.
Ladies and gentlemen, MSN as a MySpace page.
That's right. So that's coming along. That was actually not too painful. So let me make some quick changes to our navigation elements up here. So look what I'm doing. Look at this. So I've got a number of elements chosen here on the breadcrumbs. Now look at all the CSS rules that are applied to those elements. Being able to keep that cascade in your head and figure that out, I think, would be almost impossible. But let me just move up that tree, and I'm looking for background. And here it is. There's that background color. Let's just go ahead and change that. In this case, I'll just select a color from that background pattern itself. Quickly changing this. Let's change the background of this navigation element as well. I'll do the same thing. Do I see background? Not yet. Not yet. Not yet. There we go. Here's that white background color. Let's change that to something a little deeper. And then, clearly, I'm going to have to change the color of these anchor links here. And one of the challenges that I often have, I think people often have, with styles is you don't always know what other elements on the page are going to be affected when you change a style. So in this case, I suspect there are other links on this page that will be changed when I modify the style for this particular element. And if we go to our Style Application toolbar, well, that's obviously not.
Save the page.
Oh,
I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Nope.
Go to Manual and Install Application.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Sorry. I knew that. And click on Show Overlay. What we get is a semi-transparent overlay that shows me all the elements on the page that have the same styling as the one chosen. So I can easily see here these links are styled the same way. If I change the style of that anchor tag, it's going to cascade, it's going to flow through the document. So I can simply say, let's define a new style. And let me look here. So I've got this #nav. I know if I include that as part of my style, it won't affect other page elements. Anchor, let's define that in an existing style sheet. And let me just change the color to nice white, font weight bold. Say OK. And you see how quickly I can make substantial changes to the document. I can understand the CSS cascade in some very effective, very powerful ways. And if I don't want to understand the cascade, I can simply easily go and modify the properties that I need to modify in order to get the result that I want to achieve. Good stuff. Right. Thank you. And so that's part of Expression Web today. So in closing, I wanted to thank you for coming, but I also wanted to suggest that you do a few things. First, if you haven't played with it, download Expression Web from expression.microsoft.com. We've got a 30-day trial, but even better than that, go buy it from the Microsoft Store. So we've got this $99 competitive/companion upgrade that basically requires that you either have Office, have any Office application, have any Adobe application, or be a mammal to qualify for. So $99, good deal. Check out Deep Zoom Composer and C-Dragon Ajax. Deep Zoom Composer is up at expression.microsoft.com. C-Dragon Ajax up at Live Labs. Check out Super Preview for Internet Explorer, this free application that helps you migrate your sites from Internet Explorer 6 to IE8, Firefox, etc. And be like me, be a lazy scripter. Try and make your web pages do more. So thank you very much, and we're happy to take some questions.
Yep. In addition, before we take questions, I'd just like to ask anybody that please fill out your evaluation forms, and now we'll take questions. Great. Can I just ask that if you're going to ask questions, can you use the microphone? Sorry, I know that's a big pain in the butt.
Is it on?
Yeah.
So I guess there are two questions/comments. One of them has to do with the super preview. I know that when I'm working on sites, like being able to address and resolve issues on a static site is one thing, but more often than not, it's an application, you click this, you click that, and now you have a layout problem. Are there any tools that help address that?
So, so the question was, what happens if you're having a problem with dynamic content? So let me say, really, we wanted to target and focus a very, what we saw was to be the most likely problem, most common problem that we saw, which really was layout issues. So we are not yet, I'm emphasizing yet, not yet addressing dynamic, except to say, if you have onload JavaScript, we run all the onload JavaScript because we find many people try to solve layout problems with browser sniffing JavaScript.
Well, so it actually depends what you mean. If you mean Ajax, that's true. If you're meaning PHP or ASP.NET,
I was talking more on the client side DOM type of stuff, like a JavaScript that moves a DOM element around or whatnot.
Yep. So just to finish these comments, but we do actually support PHP and ASP.NET. I didn't mention that, but I'm sorry. You had another question, right?
Yeah, and it had to do with what I perceive as the disconnect between Expressions Web and Visual Studio. Like, my primary tool is Visual Studio, and more so before 08, SP1 came around, I was finding myself, I had, Visual Studio on one screen, Expression Web on the other, and I'm switching between the two. Why is there such a disconnect? They seem to do the same thing in many regards. They both target ASP.NET. They both have, the new Visual Studio 8 designers based on the Expression Designer. When are the two going to come together? Yeah,
absolutely. So let me just say, we are totally working on that. We are aware that we have not had tight integration between the two. Can I just say honestly, until we saw ASP.NET MVC come out, we weren't super hurrying to make that happen. We were really trying to make sure that front-end web developers who were writing markup had a great experience. We didn't see a lot of people write front-end markup using web forms, ASP.NET. Now with the invention of MVC, this is a lot higher priority for us. I'm sorry, I'm not going to say when. I'm only going to say we hear your pain and we're working on it.
And I think I think like the source integration is a big part of it. Like I know in my company when people are working on the static sites, I want them checking in and that kind of stuff. So they're using Visual Studio just for that purpose. And I know X3 has.
And are they using TFS?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're actually.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so we're actually that's a feature that we're totally working on for vNext is TFS integration.
Awesome, good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Super Preview solves so many problems.
Great, thank you.
Except for one.
Yes. Well, I'm sure there were a few more. The financial crisis.
So first the praise and then the slap in the face.
Sure.
I spend maybe 40% of my time converting web pages to HTML mail.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll go out and I'll test my mail and try to anticipate all the different web email clients that are out there in my customer base.
Uh-huh.
For some of the associations that I work with, there could be 7,000 people on a mailing list.
Mm-hmm.
So I go out and I test it in Smarter Mail. Looks beautiful, looks exactly the same as what's in Expression Web. Go out to mail.yahoo.com. Looks beautiful, exactly. Then I send it to myself and look at it in Outlook 2007.
Uh-huh.
And it shat upon me.
Sure.
Yep.
Sure.
And I know that this is an issue within Microsoft with regard to who's the king of the rendering engine.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to put my vote in that there be one Microsoft rendering engine that's used in all products.
Sure.
And if there would be a way, I know this is really stretching it, but to have Super Preview extend to email clients that render HTML and CSS, that would be a tremendous help. I mean, hundreds of hours that I have wasted on my, of my clients' money
Absolutely.
trying to solve these problems.
That's an awesome suggestion.
Yeah,
I have heard so many people having problems with creating HTML email that actually works.
Yeah, absolutely. We get a kind of a similar question sometimes about mobile phones and what is the list of browsers you're going to support. Thank you very much. It's a great suggestion.
Yeah, instead of browser, it should be rendering engine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
The second thing is, I'm not sure if this is in the latest version of Expression Web, but the ability to configure Expression Web to only use absolute URLs and never use relative URLs.
When it's generating those URLs?
Right.
Yeah.
Once again, the issue of jumping from pages to email.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So-
a good suggestion.
Yeah, so I'll tell you what, also, if you wanted to, my email address is eriksalt, ERIKSALT, @Microsoft.com. Feel free to send me an email with that, because I'm happy to take suggestions. And that holds for anybody if you wanted to. Also, just no flame mail, please.
Thank you.
I guess, okay. Thank you.
Hi. Many clients have asked me what kind of rendering engine does Expression Web use for analyzing either valid HTML or CSS. Which one is it?
So that's a complicated question. Let me answer. So we use our own, and let me explain why. Because that sounds horrible, doesn't it? Right? Like, why would we invent another browser? The same actually holds true for Dreamweaver's WYSIWYG environment, and we both do it for really good reasons. The same was true for Front Page. There is a big difference between a browser whose whole point is quick, low memory footprint, render your page, versus round-tripping editability. And so we wrote our own from the ground up in order to get round-tripping and editability. Certainly it would be great if our WYSIWYG surface were to converge, yeah, absolutely, with a browser.
And one of the facilities that we're actually providing with Super Preview is this snapshot mode where you can actually embed your base browser inside the program itself and get that updated as you save and refresh your documents.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to do that embedded super preview inside the app. It's because we're aware our WYSIWYG environment is not any production browser.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, the question I'm asking is because, you know, there are Firefox extensions that use Tidy from W3C or other programs that analyze and validate if you have valid HTML or CSS or even ECMA or JavaScript. Which brings me to another question. Right now, all the modern browsers have limited support for the new standards, talking about XHTML2 or HTML5, CSS3, and that's in the browser. Are we going to see this soon inside of the design tool?
You mean for the new formats that are coming out?
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. We would be insane not to support modern, the new standards as they evolve. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we actually have both accessibility checking and W3C validation checking.
So both, you mentioned kind of Tidy too. We have the option either to every time you publish or on request we call it optimized HTML, but it absolutely does a lot of the stuff that Tidy does, and there are options for it. In addition, you can choose a schema that you want, and in our view, we actually will flag errors when you're not compliant with schema. Great.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Hello, good stuff.
Thanks.
We have MSDN subscriptions where I work. We all use Visual Studio. Does that give us free access to Expression Web?
Which version of MSDN do you have?
Couldn't tell you. I know that we all use Visual Studio 2008. I think there's some kind of license going on there.
So if you have MSDN Premium, then you get Expression Web for free. If it's Pro, you don't.
You don't. That's correct. It's only the Premium. It's like
And above, I think.
Okay, I'm not sure which we have, but I'll find out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Second, when will Expression Web 3 be available for download?
Sometime later this year. That's as specific as we can get.
Okay, so it's not now. It's
not
later.
now, correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks.
So maybe I'm missing this functionality, but I've seen Expression Web and a lot of the stuff they're doing, and it seems like it's starting to get into the whole application. So the images, the style sheets, the CSS, and a lot of what I do, if we have larger sites, we want to create sprite maps to minimize the number of HTTP requests.
Yep.
I have looked high and low for something that will help me generate sprite maps because it's already got the images, it's already got control of the CSS.
Great.
I see nodding.
Is Steve Schermerhorn in the house somewhere?
One of our devs was bending our ear last night about
Exactly this topic.
Exactly
absolutely. We agree it would be a great feature. So, I wish I could say more than that.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Great. Any more questions? If not, thanks a lot, everybody, for coming. Oh, wait, one more question.
Sorry.
Great.
Yep.
So you started alluding to, so MVC got your attention.
Uh-huh.
Can you talk a little bit more about what you're going to be doing for both web forms and MVC?
Unfortunately, we haven't announced anything yet, so
Okay.
I'm not, hate to say this, not really at liberty to talk about it, but except to say that we're working on it.
Okay.
I apologize. I know that's a totally crappy answer. Yeah.
Scott Goo is bending our ear.
Yeah. Anything else? Great. Thanks a lot for coming. I hope you all enjoy the rest of Mix.